back from my Delta tour. It didn't exactly go as planned because the weather wasn't great today. There was 40-mile-an-hour gusts blowing the opposite way of high tide going out. So it was very choppy, white caps, big waves, and there was actually a small craft advisory where small boats weren't even allowed to be out on the water. But because the boat we were in was a research vessel, they are allowed to do a little more than normal boats, so we were still allowed to go out. But since the conditions were so bad, we weren't able to do the normal tour that they give because a lot of the places and different tracks and sloughs that they would usually go to, the water was just too rough to get to.
The San Joaquin River, San Joaquin Basin, Sacramento Basin. So the key with the delta is you've got the water here and you've got the water here, and they're going to go this way and out to the ocean. The Sacramento makes up probably, what, 80% of the water?
Probably
More, maybe 90% of the water. So the challenges we have is all the water is up here in the Sacramento Basin, but where we are right now is where the water is all withdrawn from. So the water comes from up here, more so than the San Joaquin, but it exits the delta, the federal pumps and the state pumps.
We launched out of Tracy. We went by the federal pumps.
And right there to our left is the federal pumping facility.
Again, we weren't able to get as close as look as they usually do because the conditions were so bad.
I hear people talk about the South Delta and the pumps. We're in the South Delta, and we're at literally the state or the federal pumping facility. Built probably what, the 50s. Old technology. I'm talking about Old River, Old and Middle River. You come down the San Joaquin, fish, and the water turns here at Old River, and then Grant Line Canal, and ends up right where we are. Because this, although it's being shown on a map as Old River, it really doesn't flow anymore. What they did, and you can see, anytime you see a straight line on a map, right?
man-made.
Exactly. But this is a more efficient way to get the water to the pumps than back here in this Old River channel. You can tell they obviously cut this canal. It's, you know, it's just an irrigation canal now. But that's how you get the water to the pumps.
Makes it confusing.
And then, yeah, it is up this direction, going north, to join with the Sacramento River. So, this is Grant Line Canal here, and this is Old River continuing on. Most of the time, the flow is actually going this direction down Old River towards the pumps. So, even though Old River is going like this, the flow is coming. This is now Grant Line Canal when we're going down, and you can see it's definitely got a lot more straight and big and broad.
At Old River, you can no longer support the volume of water that they need to get to the pumps. Back in the day, some of the water would spread out and go Old River, but a lot of it would also go down the San Joaquin to Stockton.
Okay.
And here's where we are. This is an aerial photograph. As you can see, this is Grant Line right there. We're right at that curve. So as we follow the blue, this would be the line that fish are going to follow too. And if we make a left, where we just came out of, we go to the federal pumps. And if you make a right, the way we're going to go, there's Clifton Court 4 Bay,
Oh, okay.
the state pumps. So our next stop is going to be right there at that star.
So this is the perfect example where this channel right here is Old River, but in this case the water is going this direction and this direction. So Old River is like bi-directional flow at this point.
Right.
Even though the channel itself would naturally keep going out like that to the ocean, the water is being drawn this direction.
Went by the state pumps, and normally they would take you into Clifton Court 4 Bay, but because of the construction that's going on to fix the pumps there, they actually had the 4 Bay blocked off, so you couldn't go into it.
It's the channel into Clifton Court.
Okay.
I've never seen all of this construction, so I think that this is part of Clifton Court infrastructure was damaged due to high flows. So I think that this is part of the construction. So that is what they call the radial gate. If you ever
lot of wildlife out. The water was really murky, so you couldn't really see fish or anything like that, which was kind of a bummer. The thing that was really noticeable was how bare and clearly altered the delta really is. And I mean, you can see that by all of the different channels that have been built to connect one river or slough to another. There are housing developments around that wouldn't normally be there. The river level is actually higher in some places than the building, so you'll go by a building and the building is lower than where you are, which is really weird.
I've never seen the water this high.
There's not a lot of natural habitat for the animals that are there, and it's basically just been constructed to be a chute to move the water, as much water as fast as you can, down to the pumps, which is not necessarily a bad thing to move that water, but because there's so much excess, I mean, you could just see how much water was in the system. It was clearly more than what was needed, but it's created a real issue. One thing they also showed us and explained to us was the route where the water fix is being planned, the tunnels, and they kind of explained to us how that would help the situation. And the worst part of the system is kind of where the water moves to the pumps, and that would be negated a little bit because of the planned tunnel route. And one thing that was really shocking to me also was you could just see how much water was in the system and how fast it was moving and how much the tide affected that, because we were there during high tide. And the State Water Board or whatever different agencies are trying to affect flow. They call for maybe 1,000 CFS or 2,000 CFS, which is significant to water users, but to the system it doesn't make a big difference because there's already so much water in the system. They told us a lot of stories about how disconnected different state and federal agencies are, and the line of work that FishBio does is obviously collecting and monitoring fish, and how a lot of the work that they do is work that state and federal agencies aren't able to do, but sometimes that creates an awkward tension and an awkward dynamic because the state or federal agency doesn't want to be showed up basically by a private entity, so a lot of times they'll deny their permits to do research, or won't fund a grant that they've applied for, or if they are doing pretty, harmless activities, they'll kind of give them a slap on the wrist and tell them that they need to have a permit for something as simple as sticking a GoPro in the water and filming fish going by. It was planned, but it was still a really interesting tour. They offered to give us another tour later in the year when it's not quite so windy and a little better, so I'm looking forward to that. But it was a great day. It was fun to be out on the water and fun to see stuff that I've been reading about and learning about for about the last year and a half now, so it was great.